Hi. Well, it's another beautiful day. And today I want to talk about a couple things. One thing is somebody asked me a question. And basically, what they asked was, how dare I say somebody's identity isn't real? Okay. Which they have every right to ask that. I'm not suggesting that they don't have that right. Okay. So, how dare I suggest that somebody's identity isn't real? That was the question. Now, the reason I say that, and I do, I have to own up to that, is that basically you were taught to believe in you. From the very beginning, you were taught that you were a boy or a girl, okay? Or that you were strong or weak, okay? And this is basically called programming that is built into your psyche by everyone. Now, this programming will and does run your life. Now, we call it an ego. We're not really sure what an ego is, but generally speaking, it's the thing that runs your life. Now, we believe that we run our lives because that's just the way. And the reason we believe that is because of the illusion of control. Now, what is the illusion of control? The illusion of control is I'm my own man. Or I'm a strong, independent woman. Or whatever it is. Whatever you say to yourself to reassert your idea or feeling that you are in control. Okay? Basically, what happens is that we tell ourselves stories about ourselves. Okay? That's what we do. We use all of our experience and things that happen to us, and we mold all of that into a story that we tell ourselves and tell everyone else too. Okay? And what those stories are what we think our life is. But that's not what we think. That's not what our lives are. That's just what we think they are. Okay? So this illusion of control runs deep. And the reason that is because it's so ingrained. Okay? You think you're thinking your thoughts. You think you're having your emotions. So on and so forth. Okay? But the fact is, you're not. You're not having your emotions. You're not thinking your thoughts. Your emotions are being fed to you by a program. Okay? And that program was given its instructions eons ago because the same instructions were given to your parents and the same were given to them, and over hundreds of thousands of times. And over time, the instructions have, slowly been refined and so on and so forth. But basically, that's the case. Now, because of that, we believe that we are in control. We believe that we have the right to make sure everything stays the same because that keeps everything in control. Okay? Now, for instance, let's say you're, a woman and something happens, you get raped, and then in order to keep control, okay, or to keep in control, in order so you don't lose your mind, you invent a story around it. And that story is your victimhood. Okay? And so you wear that like a badge. And as such, you can't get rid of this idea of you as being a victim. Well, you're not a victim. Okay? But you think you are. And that's all part of your identity. The fact is, you're not a victim. You're not a woman or a man. I mean, obviously, you are a woman or a man. But deep down underneath that is the soul. I know that's kind of hard to understand. Maybe you think you have a soul because you've been told that ad infinitum by everyone, including the church and the government and so on and so forth. But the fact is, you cannot possess or have something like a soul. Because it's just not possible. You cannot have a soul, you cannot possess a soul. Now, this English language that we use is very tricky, and we think we know what we're talking about, but the fact is we don't. So, what does all this mean? What it means is that we have constructed for ourselves this story of who we are, and we think that is who we are. Okay? And that includes the memories and the emotions that are, in our daily makeup. Okay? So that's why we suffer. Okay? Because of, these stories. All right? And so, in order to not suffer, in order to be free of suffering, we must let go of the story. I'm not saying anybody's identity is not good. It's fine. Go ahead and have your identity. I wish you good luck with that. But it's not going to bring you happiness. Just like achieving things won't bring you happiness either. Or fame. Or money. Or power. Only one thing will bring you happiness, and that is the love of God. Not the love of God that you get in a church, but the love of God that comes to you directly from God. Now, we get a taste of the love of God when we love someone, because that love is coming from God. Okay? And the love of God is really the only thing that matters, because everything else gets boiled down in the end to nothing. Did you have a lot of money? Fame? Power? When you're 90, laying on your deathbed or whatever, where's that fame? Where's that power? Where's that money? None of it can do anything for you. Okay? And so you are going to suffer. Now, once again, I don't want anyone to suffer, but that is just the way it is. Now, this illusion of control that we have, that we think we don't even think about it, it just is, okay, is basically hiding reality, okay, from us. That's what it's doing, okay? And the reality is that we do not have control, that the workings of our inner mind are controlled by the ego. Now, many people say, oh, the ego is just part of me. And that's true, it is part of you, okay? But it's not you, because you are a soul. Now, I know that's hard to understand, perhaps, that you are a soul. But you have to, if you want to be free of suffering, free of the constant barrage of thoughts, bad thoughts, that are constantly, making your life miserable. And that's just the way it is. So, how do we get free of these thoughts? How do we get free of this story? How do we get free of you? I remember, years ago, I used to think, oh, I wish I weren't me. I wish I were a movie star. I wish I were a banker. I wish I were a stockbroker. I wish I were successful. Okay? And the reason I wished that was because I didn't like me. And I'm sure you probably don't like you either. And so, therefore, that is the suffering that you have to undergo. Now, a lot of people believe in karma and believe that that suffering comes from a prior life and this and that and the other. I don't know about that. But what I do know is that this suffering is making your life just bad. You can't really appreciate anything if you are suffering, because everything is overlaid with, like a filter. A filter that everything goes through. And that filter is your ego. Okay? We don't have to call it an ego. We can call it a fake identity. I don't even know what an ego is, and I don't know what a fake identity is. All I know is that it's fake. And your identity that you think you have is not real. Why is it not real? Because it's basically a lie that was told to your great grandparent and has been told to every single generation since then. Okay? And that lie is that you are a person. Now, we all think that to some extent, of course. But what we really are is souls. Anyway, now this illusion of control that we have is what's stopping us from awakening, because we think we've got it all under our control until something happens and we're devastated by something and we have an emotional storm and we feel really bad about ourselves. Then, we don't think we're in control. We just think, my life is shitty. That's what we think. Okay? Now, I know this is hard to understand. How you can have your psychology or your personality on the one hand and the soul on the other. But the soul is the seat of awareness. That's where your awareness comes from. And that is what you are. As long as you believe that you are a person with a story, then you're going to suffer. And that's just the way it is. Now, what that means is that you are in a jail. Okay? You are in a prison. Okay? And that prison is your thoughts. Okay? I mean, I'm not trying to say that your thoughts are bad or anything. Obviously, thinking is good. But if it becomes a prison, which it does invariably, maybe not a prison when you're 20, but by the time you hit 40, it is a prison. Okay? Now, what that means is that you're not happy. And nothing that you do is going to make you happy. Not all the achievements, not all the power, fame, money isn't going to make you happy. And you think to yourself, oh, if I keep going and I just keep earning, eventually I'll hit that number and then I'll have everything. Okay? Oh, I became a millionaire. I've got $1 million. Now I can just relax and be me. And so on and so forth. But the only problem with that idea is that it never works out. Let's say you do get that $1 million or that great acting job, excuse me, or whatever it is you're striving for. Or maybe you just want to accomplish something for the world, okay? And you do. You accomplish something for the world, you get that great acting job, you're a movie star, or you made $1 million. When you're done doing that, how do you feel? After the first few hours of self-congratulation and the heady rush of success, you're you again. And that's just the way it is. And so you're unhappy. And so you try to fill that unhappiness with alcohol, tobacco, firearms, gambling, sex. Only one problem, that happiness hole can't be filled by any of those. We think it can. We think this is going to make me happy, but it doesn't. And so, and the reason, the root of all of that is because you believe you're a person. That's the root of all of it. Okay? And because of that, you can't escape from the prison. Okay? Even people who are in prison can't escape from their own personal prison. Okay? Even if they get out of jail, they're still in their prison. You've heard of people who got out of jail and then committed suicide because they couldn't handle the outside world? Well, what it was they couldn't handle the prison they were in without the prison that used to be around them. That's the way it was. Okay? And that unhappiness pervades everything in your life. Okay? And whatever story you're telling yourself, okay, which is most likely not a good one, okay? Maybe you had a great childhood. Maybe you had a great, teenage years. Maybe you were a football player or an actor or whatever, and you just had a great time. Okay? And then you had a great time in your 20s and your 30s and your 40s. Okay? But eventually, you're going to start feeling the suffering because everyone suffers. That's the one thing we humans have in common with each other is the suffering. And that suffering is really caused by our own thoughts. Well, not really our own thoughts because we're not the ones making them. But what we're doing is we're hearing the thoughts. Okay? And the emotions, they're being mixed up like a witch in a cauldron. And what can I put in here next? Oh, what can I do next to this guy? Okay? And, all those emotions are poured onto you. Okay? To make you feel bad, because then you'll feel bad about yourself and you'll think you're a piece of shit. And that's basically the way it is. Okay? So, that's why I say your identity is fake. Because it's not really you. We think it's us. We think that identity is us. Okay? We think that's how we are, who we are. Oh, we take the good and the bad and we hug it to us. Love that identity. But that identity is going to cause suffering somewhere down the line. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but somewhere along the line, you're going to suffer. And that's not good for you. But there is a way out of suffering, and that is to awaken, to realize, to recognize that you are not the one doing the thinking. Now, whether or not you believe in a soul or higher consciousness or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. If you want higher consciousness, the way to get that is to waken up. If you want to have contact with your own soul, you need to wake up. Yeah, we can have contact with our own soul by going into the woods and seeing the beautiful trees and all the life around us and connecting with that life. Or by surfing and connecting with the life in the wave, or mountain biking and connecting with the life on the mountain. That's a way of connecting with your soul. And meditation, really great to help you connect with your soul and help you get a taste of being in the now. But you can't stay in the now because of this story that's going round and round in your head. Okay? And so you keep falling out. Even after you meditate for an hour and you come out of the meditation, you feel, oh, I feel so good. Why do you feel good? Because you have been in contact with God. That's why. Okay? And that's great. I'm super happy that you was able to be in contact with God. But in order to stay in contact with him, okay, and have him as a part of your life that's always there, and that includes his love, his joy, his peace, his wisdom, being a part of your life, then you need to awaken. I mean, maybe you don't believe in God. Maybe you think that the world is, or the universe is all there is, okay? Which is fine. I mean, I'm not trying to make anyone believe in anything. But if that's what you think, still, there has to be a consciousness collective, okay? Because there is a consciousness collective here on Earth, okay? We all know that. It's called the internet. Anyway, but that is a collective, a consciousness collective where we all talk to each other and say stuff. But above that, beyond that, before there was even an internet, there was still the conscious collective of all those conscious on earth. Okay? And if you want to have more consciousness, better access to the collective, then you need to awaken. You need to raise the level of your awareness, the level of your consciousness. And the way to do that is to accept that you are not a person. Yes, you are a person. You have a name, you have a psychology, you have a persona. Okay? But that's not you. I know it's hard to really sort of understand how this could be so. But it is so. And if we continue to believe in youism, okay, and continue to think that we are in control, which is what we think. And there's a lot of reasons to think that, right? There are. And the reason we think it is because we have been taught to think it. Okay? But the fact of the matter is that the thing that's in control is a part of you that is called the ego. We don't know what it is. I think it's like a program or something of that nature. I have no idea. But this program, this entity that is inside of your mind and is making all of your decisions for you, is running your life. So you don't really have a life. Okay? Yeah, there's a span of time in which you live. That's true. And I'm not saying anything about that. But if it's being run by some entity that only wants you to be unhappy, then what kind of life do you have? Not a very good one. So, I know it's hard to think about yourself as possibly having a fake identity. Yeah, it's very hard to think of that, okay? But think of all the suffering that you're going through. And you are going through suffering right now. Whether you even know it or not, if you ever complain, feel agitated, feel angry, feel jealous, feel unhappy, it's because of the suffering. It's because you're telling yourself a story and you're believing in that story and you believe it's true. But it's not. Okay? And that's just the way it is. Now, you can argue with me. You can say, oh no, my story is true. Okay? And I'm fine with that if you want to say that and think that. Okay? But the fact of the matter is, it's not. It's just a story. Just like the Bible. Okay? Now, a lot of people go, what? The Bible's not a story. The Bible's the Word of God and all that. Okay? Which is fine. You know? But the fact is, it's a story. And so is your life. A story that you experienced and made up as you went along. Because the story is made up of not just your experiences, but how you experienced it. How you took it. And that story of how you took it is filled with suffering. It's filled with you having a bad time because you reacted to something that happened to you. These reactions that we have are under the surface. We don't even know exactly where they're coming from. So therefore, we're not in control of them. Okay? I mean, there's tons of pointers here to let us know that we are not in control. That we are not the ones in charge of our own lives. And they're easy to see if you look. And that's just one more idea of why you need to awaken. Now, the fact is that everyone is going to awaken. and that most people awaken just as they're about to die. Okay? Which is great. But the time between the awakening and the beginning of death is just full of suffering. And I want to try and save you from that suffering, which is why I'm making these videos. So, first thing we have to do is recognize that this story that you have been telling yourself for all these years just isn't so. Okay? Most of the time when we're talking to other people, we say, I'm a job title. Or I'm a location. Or I'm a husband. Or wife. Or whatever it is we say that identifies us as someone. Right? But the problem with saying that, or the problem with thinking that, is that it's not true. You're not a job title. You're not a wife. You're not a husband. These are roles. And what happens is we confuse roles with who we are. Okay? If you had a kid, raised a kid, okay, for 20 years, you think you're a mom or a dad. And so, therefore, everything that you've done in your life is based on that presumption of being a mom or a dad. But then what happens when the kid grows up and goes away to college? Then you're going to have unhappiness, empty nest syndrome. Right? I mean, I'm experiencing some of that because my kid has gone away. But anyway, he's fine. But the point is that this suffering of not having the other person to make your role real, which is what it is, okay, is part of being a person. This role of being a mother or being a father or being a doctor or being a policeman, okay, or whatever it is not you. You think it's you. You can ask any cop and they'll tell you they're a cop. And they have a gun that's always near them, right? Why? Because that's who they are. That's who they are. That's their identity. Okay? And the same thing with a lawyer or a doctor. And you need people to confirm your identity. That's why having a son or a daughter really makes you feel good, because that person is confirming to you, yes, you are a mother. You know, when that baby suckles off your breast, okay, or you dandle it on your knee, or whatever it is, that's reinforcing your role, making you feel like, yes, I am a dad. Yes, I am a father, okay? And so that becomes like concrete in your mind. And so when the child is gone, and it's terrible when children leave, isn't it? You're going to suffer. And that's because of this concrete idea of who you are that is in your mind. And this idea is just wrong. So how dare I say that somebody's idea of who they are is wrong? Well, because it's true. Okay? You can say it's not true. You can say that I shouldn't be making people feel bad about their identities or whatever. I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to make people see that their identities aren't true. Their identities aren't who they are. I mean, look, I'm not trying to change anybody's life. Well, yeah, I am trying to change someone's life. I'm trying to get you to wake up. But I'm not trying to make you think anything or believe anything, okay? What I'm trying to do is help you to see what the truth is. The truth is always there for you to see it. Maybe you think that you're somebody, okay? And you say, I'm a doctor, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a this, or I'm a that. You're reinforcing a role that you're playing. Okay? I told you before that back in the Greek theater, they used to call a mask a persona. That role is just like a mask, and you can take it off. Okay? And believe me, when you do take that mask off, that role off, you're going to feel better. Because you are not a mother, you're not a father, you're not a policeman, you're not a lawyer, you're not a doctor. You are a soul. Anyway, clock on the wall says it's time I need to end this video. I hope this has been helpful. Please comment and ask me questions so that I can continue helping you with awakening. Because it's really what's important in this world. Getting the direct current from God of love, peace, joy, and wisdom, creativity is what's important. Because in the end, everything else just falls away. Okay? You treasure your money, you treasure your fame, you treasure your power. In the end, it's going to be gone. But you know what's not going to be gone? Your soul. It won't be your soul. It'll be a soul that you are. Because you cannot possess a soul. But that part of you is going to be there. And it wants to be in contact with you. It wants to connect with you. But if you are too busy in your mind with these thoughts, okay, which you are, then you can't hear the soul trying to connect, okay? Or if you do hear it, you say, oh, I'm nuts, I'm crazy. I went nuts, okay? Which is fine, you can say that. I'm not saying you can't say that, but it doesn't get you anywhere. So, that's why I say that your identity is unreal. All right, well, I love you all because you're me, because we're all one thing. Okay? We are the universe. Everything in the universe is us. And everything in the universe is in us. Because it's all one thing. And God loves you. Because you are a soul. All right, well, it's been great talking to you. Have a great life.